I want to thank everybody for coming down and watching this podcast. This is the first ever Mayor's Podcast in the City of Garfield. I'm honored to be sitting next to one of the stakeholders in the City of Garfield, one of the shakers and movers in the City of Garfield, Shane Sudol. Shane Sudol is the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of the City of Garfield. And Shane, you've been CEO for about 10 years?
8 years, December 2015, and I came into Garfield October of 2012. So 11 years I've been in this city.
11 years. So about 12 years ago, the Boys Club was on the fringe of forget about it.
Correct.
Being married with the Lodi Boys Club, the Hackensack Boys Club, the Clifton Boys Club. Everybody like piranhas were coming after us.
Correct.
You came on in, turned things around, and now everybody wants to know the roadmap that you've done to get us going.
So first, let me start with Mayor. Thank you for having me on the first edition of this podcast. It's a really cool vehicle that I think that we get to talk about the club. So as you know, as a trustee as well, it has not been an easy road the last 11 years to get where we are today. I think when I look at trustees and our roadmap, a lot of what I have to thank over the years is our staff, our COO, Alahadina Banch, our office manager, Yesenia Canepa, for staying on board with myself to fix, what the club needed to be.
And you've had a good team because Sugar and everybody's been with you for about
everybody
since the beginning.
Since we kind of rebranded the club, we had to fix our financials and the ability to serve the kids from a business sense, and that means just understanding where the donations, grants, the abilities of the club, get the right people in place, and then also support, right? Longtime Garfield supporter John DeFalco, through a connection with Party City in 2015, made a large donation of $215,000 to the club.
Good job, Johnny D. About time you come across. You never bought me a cup of coffee.
And through that, we kind of were able to look at what our 10-year plan was in getting back to business, rolling up our sleeves and servicing the kids in Garfield, and we were able to accelerate that plan. And then also at the time, before they rebranded as Citizens Bank, Investors Bank came in, and they were able to take a look at our bad debt, and they were able to give us some solutions that made it more manageable for us in terms of cash flow and support. So in 2016, that was so it took about 4 years.
So you have, not only you got to take care of the kids and find out programs for the kids, you got to start working around the financing of the old debt and the headaches that you had prior. And then, you're a 50, for everybody to understand that the Girls and Boys Club is a 501c3 organization. Yes. So their finances come from donations.
Correct.
So, so you have to constantly get donations from the public, from private citizens, from corporations, from small businesses, just to stay afloat.
Correct.
So every year, you got to hit the same people up and different people. And
yeah.
Oh man, you're like a salesman.
And you can
vacuum cleaner salesman.
Right. You can articulate this when before Boys and Girls Clubs, childcare, centers in general became licensed. You remember the days of growing up in the club that you could just, drop in, have some fun, whether it was, swim and gym, other games.
I remember going down there, me and my brothers, right, all of us, because it was just a boys club then. No girls. So I guess the girls had to stay home back in the 70s, and the boys got all shipped over to the boys club. And you go down there, you pay your monthly dues. I think it was all in cash or a check. And you walk in whenever you want, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock. And then during the school year, it was at 3 o'clock. When school got out, you just show up and you leave when you want. You come and you go. You come and you go. Right. And it was just one person at the door
Yep.
And you play pool and bumper pool and this and that.
Yep.
And if you were a pain in the butt, and I remember because I was a pain in the butt, all my friends were pains in the butt, they threw you out. And here you are, you're an 8-year-old or 9-year-old, and you got thrown out of the boys club.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, I gotta go home now.
Right. Yeah.
Your parents were called.
Right. And things have changed, right? We have to call parents now. You can't necessarily walk to the club any longer. You have to be transported, from school to, to the club. And these are just things.
And you don't throw anybody out in the middle of the.
Right. You can't. You got to call home. They can't walk home. There's a lot of rules, a lot more rules and regulations that have required, increasing expenses, right? Ratio. We talk about that all the time. It used to be, you'd have one awesome counselor in the gym handling 50 kids. Now depending on which road you go and license, you're looking at 1 to 10, 1 to 15, those staff costs.
You guys never hired me as a counselor. I applied like about 8, 9 times, and I'm never hired.
At that time, I think it probably got lost in the mail. I can't say we received the email, but I think, your application might have got lost.
I think that was Glenn Starring. Glenn Starring and Russ Triolo threw my stuff away.
That's, too. You can talk about the club and the impact on, on the city. Glenn Starring, got his start in the club here in Garfield.
Yep.
He became vice president of the Northeast region for Boys and Girls Clubs of America over 10 years. Russ Triolo, who the club honored a few years ago, adding him to the Wall of Champions. He's going on year 45 of the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Union County.
Steve Wienick was a big shot.
Right.
At least during my time.
And then we have a few others too. Greg Barron, cool story with him. Garfield. So there's 18 Boys and Girls Clubs in New Jersey.
Just 18?
Just 18 organizations, but in terms of sites, school sites, we're well over 200 sites throughout the state. But Greg Barron back in 1977, and at that time too, he was the National Boy of the Year.
That's right. I remember that.
Girls were not technically under the Boys and Girls Club banner until 1991. So relatively, still new, right?
Yeah.
It was old. So Greg Barron, we have this in the Boys and Girls Club world. Youth of the Year is the most prestigious award you can win as a youth. So he won in 1997. He was the Boys and Girls Club Boy of the Year.
That's right.
Went on to win the state, the region, and then become the National Youth of the Year.
He wrote the best essay. No, I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
And then, so part of that honor, any National Youth of the Year has the ability to meet the President of the United States. So he had the ability to sit down and have a conversation with President Carter, back in the day.
Yeah.
And Garfield is one of 4 clubs in New Jersey that can say that they've had a National Youth of the Year.
I remember that. It was a big thing back then. I mean, to have someone from Garfield to win such a prestigious award and to actually go down and meet the president. If you go into the Boys Club, you'll see a great picture of Greg and President Carter and everything like that.
Absolutely. And
that's the equivalent. I just want to put it out there. That's the equivalent of someone like that winning it to like the Garfield, winning the championships or the football.
Correct.
Down in Miami in the 30s or 20s. I forgot the year, but I know I'll get butchered on it because I should know it. But I'm also nervous about this podcast.
No, I hear you.
But that's the equivalent. That's how big it was. At least when I was growing up, I was like, and when I see Greg, he's a successful dentist.
Yep.
A great father and a husband and everything like that, and he's very successful in everything he does. But I remember seeing him, and what I think about, man, he was the Boy of the Year, in the whole country.
Yep. So at that time, and I don't know what the scholarship numbers were back in 1997. 1977. Sorry, I'll have to ask him. But now if you go on, through the various competitions, you're walking away with, not only these opportunities of meeting the president. I think now they're getting, Toyota's one of the sponsors, and they'll get a car, but they get over $50,000 in college scholarships, renewable over 4 years.
I think Greg got like $13 and a dinner at the White House. Greg, if you're listening, you got robbed.
You're probably right. But this club has been able over the years, and, we touched on the financial struggles over the years. And I think that's why what excites me about the future is, without having what we did years ago, we've still been able to impact a lot of kids. And you look at, some recent examples. We have, this young woman, Jasmine Kubak, who, if you go back to 2013, she
Yep.
was she was our club youth of the year, but she just finished her doctorate at Washington University in St. Louis,
Yes, I know Jasmine.
and is now a PhD, a product of the Garfield Board of Education in the high school. And you look at her, and I will say, in terms of reading her thesis and what got her PhD, I can't tell you.
You didn't read it. It was summarized.
I went on for her presentation of it, and I am beyond proud of what she's been able to do. She essentially founded our STEM programming back in 2013,
Yes.
so that we had an idea with another one of her great counselors, Emmy Mariquin, was
Yes,
another one that
yep.
really gave us this idea that STEM was important. And then another product of the school, the school system in the club, is Violetta Yas,
Yes.
who has become over the years a advocate for all boys and girls clubs. And
Yes, right.
she recently, last summer, was promoted, or went into a new role with NBC4 as a lead meteorologist for NBC New York, which is really exciting. And going back to we can touch on,
I got a D- in meteorology in college. I took the course because I thought I was going to get an ace it. It was the hardest thing in the world. So Violetta, I know Violetta, she's a great person, and I'm just impressed she's doing meteorology, because I still think about that D-.
Well, you've been successful in other areas, and look, as a meteorologist though too, you can be wrong every day and still keep your job.
Yeah.
It's a nice perk. But you look at the wealth of people that have come out of the club that have had success in various different ways. You can talk about Wayne Corbett and Miles Austin, Louis Castillo having NFL careers in sports. We're talking here about some other career avenues that I think once when you're in the club and you understand the variety and the multiple things that we have going on, that they can see different career opportunities. For example, what we're doing here in this awesome studio with Marvin.
It's not even that. It's like when you go to the club. Like, I remember going to the club, and it's not, those people you mentioned, they became successful, almost celebrity status. But there are a lot of other people that came through the club who are successful in their own right. Let it be from an electrician to a doctor. My brothers and sisters, I know, well, not my sisters, my brothers, they all went through the club. They're successful. Their friends are successful, because the club, was part of our life. The counselors, I remember all my counselors from that club. We used to play dodgeball, and or what we call the bombardment. So, and we played against the counselors, and they were throwing basketballs at us, and they were pegging us, and we loved it. And
right.
I remembered all the counselors, and they made us who we are today.
Right.
And that's what the club did. They made you, the social development that you got from the club, that made you interact with other people, and then all the programs that you guys had in the clubs that we did. I remember photography. We were talking about the contest that Greg Barron won. I remember the contest I won at the boys club. I think it was the watermelon eating contest. We had all kinds of things going on there, but this club makes you a better as you become a young adolescent, a young adult, and then you move on. But you make lifelong friends, and that's what the club is about. So, like, I have to believe that everybody that ever came through that club became successful in their own right.
Right, and success,
and that's what it's all about.
Right, and success looks differently for, as we know, differently for every individual that comes in, and you touched on the relationship aspect, with the kids and the counselors, right? Like, they're almost like teachers, right? We're still trying to teach and instill all of these things, values into our kids, but we know the kids are smart, right? Like, once they're out of their school day, it's a little harder for them to understand that we want them to learn, and those types of things. So the relationship, what we call youth development professionals, office managers, the employees of the club, they have to connect with these kids in a way that they can understand,
because they make a lifelong impression. Today, it's just different from when we grew up, having the Boys and Girls Club. But today, like, some of your counselors may be like really the only adult
Right.
in one of your kids' lives and everything like that. We'll give them like a mentorship and everything
Yep.
like that. Unfortunately, in today's society, a lot of parents work all day.
Right.
And they don't have the time, and that's where the Boys Club comes in, and that's where all other organizations come in, from the rec to the YMCA, where they come in, they can drop the kid off. No, they're safe. Someone's taking care of them,
Yep.
and they're enjoying themselves. They're not going there to get picked on, made fun of, or sit around and do nothing.
Right.
They're actively engaged in something going on, and that's the development they get. And it's important that the counselors are part of that Boys Club, because I know my counselors are an important part of my life, because they almost mentor you, they mold you, and and that's the good part about it. And I know your counselors, I know all of them, because I had them as students at one time. I see them as adults now, or young adults, and they do make a difference.
They do,
and it's a lifelong. They remember that.
And it goes to this day. Like I said, I've been with Garfield for 11 years. The amount of kids, parents, or kids that are now parents or wherever they're in their careers, and they walk in to see Shug, they walk in to see Yessie, and holy cow, I didn't see you for 10 years, but they're successful in A, B, and C, and whatever that looks like for them. But the thought, right, is they're coming back to the club to convey where they are in life, because that individual during their time of growing up was important to them.
Yep.
And you can't measure that.
No.
And, sometimes it's not as easy to understand the impact that you're having on the kids, on a day-to-day, right? Because you're dealing with, they don't want to do homework, the day-to-day, whatever the case is.
They don't want to be there that day.
Right.
They don't want to participate in something.
But the point is, if they're connecting with that individual, and that's the hardest part, I think, today, right? Like, they're no longer just a counselor.
Right.
Circumstances have, kind of forced even these young adults now to be mentors, as they're still trying to figure out their own lives, right? Like, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think I was probably 26 or 27 before I somewhat figured out what I wanted to do. And
I haven't figured anything out. I go day by day, minute by minute, second by second. I don't even know what we're doing after this.
Right. But they work so hard, and I think one of the good things about what they do with the kids is they're trying to teach and be a part of these kids' lives, and I don't think they understand sometimes how pivotal and influential they are.
Right.
And then when you look on them, right, like, it's like, oh, I want to be Tyrell, I want to be Yessie, I want to be Rose, Tyrell. They're a role model, right?
Yeah, they are.
And and that's important, because back in the day of you and your brothers, your family, and everyone growing through the club on its inception, now our responsibility is greater, right? Like, we have to justify the funding. We have to justify not just to grants, to our donors, to our families, because of the cost, right? I think sometimes what gets lost sometimes is a 501c3 nonprofit. Everything is free, or everything is affordable. For us to do what we do is $1.5 million each year. So whether that's earned revenue, donation grants, our golf outings, whatever it is.
So your expense raised $1.5 million.
And that's
Johnny D, you hearing this? Get another check out.
And that's the important thing for people to understand. We work, between, myself, the staff, and the board and our coaches, we work really, really hard, to accomplish what we can in terms of having the best club experience for our kids. But that's each year we need to do.
And I
that.
can tell you, your coaches association is second to none.
Correct.
They are on top of the ball of everything, and the volunteering they do is just I can't believe the time they put into it. And all of the coaches, they'll some of the kids even give back, like they're still in high school and they're coaching,
right?
Because they see that their families are doing it. But like, it's just amazing. Like, these are family people, from the cheerleading coaches to the football coaches, the baseball, the volleyball. They all put significant amount of time into it, and I don't think they get enough credit. I know they get enough headaches.
Right. And that's something that I think over the last few years we've gotten a little bit better at, is acknowledging their importance. But you're right, they're just not, I think, appreciated enough. because the other thing too, we are the only ones that have an entity, the only club in New Jersey that has an entity like the Coaches Association.
Right.
Everything else is done a little bit differently, but the Coaches Association, since the inception of the club in the 60s, late 50s, the Coaches Association has always been a part of that. And you look at now, right, we have all of these different requirements around safety and protection of kids through Boys and Girls Clubs of America in terms of these standards. People across the board are losing coaches. And while I won't say recruiting coaches is easy today, but the group that we have are committed. Some of them are still helping with their kids out of our programs for years because they understand the importance for it, right? And we'll get a football coach and say, hey, coach, we need you for basketball and, and volleyball. And you get this group that is now year round. You don't get that, I look at myself, right? Sometimes too. I don't know that I could do that, right? Like, I don't know that I could give, especially now that we're in football season, the last month, our coaches are already 5 days a week.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could work, take care of my family, coach for 5 days.
Football and cheerleading started back in, I think the third week in July, a couple days a week. And now all of a sudden you hit it in August. I only know because my son plays football for the Boilermakers. And it's every day. And you see the coaches that they're dedicated, they're committed.
They really
to it,
are.
But it's the same coaches year in and year out. And it'll probably turn when their kids end up moving on and getting to high school. But sometimes some of those coaches even stay. Like, I know some of those coaches, they got kids in high school. Yeah. And they have no more skin in the game. Right. But they're still there. They're still there because it's just a testament to, the Coaches Association and the Girls and Boys Club. Right. It's you know what? I give them all the credit. Any other programs going on?
So I'll start with the program that I'm excited. Well, since we're using this studio, one of the programs, over the last, year and a half, and I'll touch on 3 that I think we've made some real progress over, the last few years. But most recently is what we call our Music Makers program. Years back, Sergeant Jeff Stewart, who leads the community affairs for the Garfield Police Department, was influential in getting us some funding to create a music studio. And we were able to get the construction, the equipment that we needed. It took us some time to find the right people, but now we have people coming in, working with the kids on developing, music, the melodies, the beats. We're writing songs, we're producing songs. We're looking to have the kids now turn their songs into music videos. And this is something that we haven't had. And it's an opportunity when you talk with these kids, right? Like, and I guess I'll, age myself a little bit here, but this was never, an opportunity that I thought could be a career, right? So this is something that they're aspiring to be. And over the last year, and maybe I can ask Marvin, maybe there's a way that we can incorporate one of the young kids, like a 30-second sound bite of one of our kids into this podcast so they can hear.
About coming here is playing with everyone and playing video games with my friends.
My favorite thing to do at the club is to play with my friends, especially in the gym because there's so many fun activities to do. And I love the computer room too.
I think the club represents a nice family. We're all willing to help one another no matter what, and everyone's there for each other. We all care.
So for our audience listening, Marvin is the man that runs Bravery Studio, who's so kind to have us come in today. So let's give a round of applause for Marvin. Hey, Marvin! Bravery Studio is located in Garfield.
Phenomenal place, and this would be, this would kind of be a second step, and I'm going to put Marvin on the spot too, that, we're going to look in the school year to see how we can get some kids down here to experience this too. Cause like I said, this is an opportunity, and I know right? Like, so back to kind of how we're structured a little bit, and then I'll go into the second program. Primarily we're K through 6,
Right.
K through 5, and then recently we've got this 21st century grant where we can offer a free aftercare program at the middle school.
You hear that, parents?
Grades 6 through 8.
6 through 8. Any parent who wants a free aftercare program, you don't want your kids going home too early. If they don't have a sport and you got nothing going on, sign up for the Boys Club. It is free from 3:05 to 6 o'clock, right?
Yep.
At the middle school. And it's beautiful. I'm there. I see it all the time. They do a tremendous job. They got counselors there. They do homework hour. They do a lot of, what is it? Oculus?
The Oculus. With the VR,
Yeah.
the VR glasses, some community gardening, and some other things. And so when I look at that, 8th grade, 13, 14 is when, you're kind of
You're too cool,
out,
right?
You're too cool, you're aging out. And then from 14 to 18.
I haven't hit that age yet. I'm trying to find that too cool age.
I hear you. I hear you. But 14 to 18, we're working on, ways to get that age group into the club. And this has been a program that they are super excited
It's
about.
the toughest age because if you're not involved in something, there's kids involved in arts, there's kids involved in sports, and the parents after school, they go home and they get ready for whatever they're going from dancing to playing a sport. But if you're not involved in anything, it's tough to get those 13, 14 freshmen to do something.
So this we hope is a start to get that youth population back engaged with the club. And then the second program I'm really excited about that we've been able to develop over the last 3 years, obviously with COVID and all the trauma and challenges around that. The club was able to hire a licensed clinical licensed social worker. We've developed some others that have went out and gotten their license, their LSWs. But so our wellness team is about 4 employees supported by 4 to 5 volunteers, depending on the semester around school. Last school year, we developed a partnership with the Board of Education to allow our social workers into the school day, not just to handle Boys and Girls Club members. It's just Garfield kids in general.
Yep.
We call them lunch bunches. They go in.
We're all part of the same fabric.
Absolutely. And the exciting part about that is we're really trying to break down some barriers and challenges for them. As like when you worry about self-confidence, behavioral things, it doesn't allow you to work to focus energy on other things that you need to be successful, whether it's reading and writing, just socialization skills of making friends, or whatever the case is. So that team,
and I think a big thing has to do with that, but I know the SENO, and I think it's a fantastic thing because I think our kids need it because they're losing that social part of their life.
Right.
They rather socialize on a cell phone,
correct,
on an iPad or whatever, and they don't know who they're talking to, and they lose that where they have that gift to gab or just sit next to someone and talk about something. They rather go in their basement, their bedroom, and just become a vegetable for a couple hours.
Right. So and you look at that, right? Like it's you want to be able to communicate, but you don't know how. So we're trying to figure out ways to develop them.
Just imagine that when you get older and you gotta go for a job interview, right?
Right. You can't communicate even what you want. You can't communicate.
Sometimes you become socially inept, and it's like, oh my God. He's a 40, 50-year-old person.
Right.
Well, that's 30 years down the line.
So that we've seen some measurable increases around that over the years. So that we're looking for we're just looking to sustain and increase our ability to do things in that area. The other thing, the last program I'll touch on that I'm super excited about, which we'll be piloting in your middle school. One of our board members, Andrea Montalbano, who works for Deloitte, back in June, we did what they call Impact Day, and this was probably for the last 5 years we've partnered with Deloitte on this, doing different types of this year we did an introduction to AI, artificial intelligence. We brought in a group from Saddlebrook Code Ninjas around STEM, but Deloitte over the last few years has developed this pilot program around what they're calling STEM factories, and they're training school districts in
right.
rural cities to build these really detailed rover kits. So over the summer, though, the Boys and Girls Club of Garfield will be the first 501c3 nonprofit to partner with Deloitte across the country.
Way to go, Deloitte. Good job, Andrea.
So super excited. So we will start this in October with our 21st Century Grant kids, that they will be building out these rover kits in this really detailed STEM program that we're really excited in hopes of bringing some other partners around STEM, into the fold, with Garfield. And as you know, right, like STEM or STEAM, it encompasses so many different skill sets,
Right.
that, right, like I was never good at math or science, so when you look at an aftercare setting, if you're struggling in your school day with those subjects,
Yep.
we're reinforcing what is going on in the school day, through, these types of programs. And I couldn't be more excited for this pilot program to launch in the fall.
See, that's a great program because, the boys clubs were built, I don't know when every boys club was built, but I know when Garfield Boys Club, and I say boys club because I keep thinking about it's a boys and girls club.
Right. I hear you.
I think I gave you a picture where my uncle actually broke ground back
Yep.
in like the late 60s or something like that. And then they added the pool in the 70s and everything. But the clubs like the YMCA and the rec center, they were built to encompass like basically athletes. It was a
Right.
gym. Right? It was a gym, couple of hoops. Kids went there to play flag football, basketball, get smacked around with basketballs as a bombardment or dodgeball.
Right.
When I was there, they had bumper pool and pool tables and ping pong, and that was it.
Right.
But if you weren't involved, if you weren't good at being an athlete or you like sports, and not everybody does, because I see this as a principal of the middle school, I know not everybody is into the sports.
Right.
So they got to get involved in something else. And we were talking about that earlier.
Right.
And the arts, the performing arts, the visual arts, the STEAM, the engineering. This is the stuff that is happening today for a lot of kids.
Right.
This is the stuff that some kids get excited about. They don't care about, playing basketball. I'm not athletic. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
that. So you go to that. You go and you do some STEM, and it's good that Deloitte is doing something like that because it grabs a certain amount of kids' interest that
Yep.
they really like this. They really like that. We have a tremendous amount of kids who love. We have our Garfield Middle School production television,
Right.
and they do a great job, and they love it. And they love it. And this is the stuff they do. I got kids who paint murals in the middle school
Right.
from your art program, from the 21st Century Grant, part of the club. We got
Your
kids
teacher, Jason Roberts, phenomenal with that.
Yep. We have our cooking club through the boys club, right? So
Yep.
if you're a member of the, you go to the Garfield Middle School and you join the Boys and Girls Club after school program, they got cooking classes, dance classes, all these things. And it's not just playing basketball and football and wiffle ball and baseball. You got kids who go to the library and they read and just want to sit back and relax and read. And,
Right.
and that's what this whole boys club encompasses. And it's tough
It is, because you look at it, and I said this
because you
earlier.
have to have the facility
Right.
to bring
Right.
all that stuff.
And the way facilities were constructed, years ago, it's not necessarily conducive, to what we're trying to do today. But at the same time, and this being in the schools, right? We're required to do so much more within such more limited time, less resources, right? So you have to be creative. You got to think outside of the box.
You got 3 hours after school from 3 to 6, right?
How
And you
I
got
was
the
solving,
bing, bing, bing,
all
bing.
the youth problems in the world during that time. It's not easy. But what I'll say though is, you take a look at what the schools do really well, what other areas in the community doing really well, and the way I look at it, it's our responsibility to try to fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
And you got to understand, learn from the kids too, right? Like, there's I mentioned Code Ninjas, a few minutes ago. I was talking around STEM, and this just goes to, to say, like, you hear some of the kids talk about coding. They want to, their careers developing video games. Never once.
I have no idea how would they do that. I
Right.
can't even play a video game.
And I didn't even think of it ever as a career. I just wanted to play the new Madden, right? Like, or whatever game was out there. I just wanted to play with it. I never thought.
I can't even
of
play
that.
Madden. Atari. That was me. Atari.
Go.
Put a quarter in the machine and watch the ball. Bing, bing, bing,
They
bing,
might have,
forget
they might
about
have that unit in the other room over there, the nostalgia room.
the nostalgia room. Yes.
But you look at that and you look at what these kids are interested in now. And we don't have the ability to, to find, we have to find the ability to find these individuals that can teach these kids these kind of careers, right? It's no longer just come in and hang out, right? Like we've got it, back to the support system around mentoring and, whatever the circumstances.
So you got like the music room. Someone has to know what they're doing in that music room. You just can't go in there and start banging on pots and pans.
Right. And surprisingly, some of these kids, with an iPhone can do some of this stuff, and when it comes, to,
it's amazing what they could do with an iPhone.
Right.
I can't even pull up a picture.
So these are things that we're trying to learn how to do right, and listening to these kids that come into the club about what resources that they need, and then the role of the board, trusting between myself and the staff. Look, we got to take a chance on this music makers program. I know it's not cheap, right? It is a very expensive program to put through, but the result of it is these songs and these kids feeling accomplished in what they're doing, giving them the confidence to pursue that, right? And and going back to, I didn't touch on it earlier when I was talking about the club, but the mission of the club, right, is to really fulfill the potential of any kid, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
And that could simply just be self-confidence. When I mentioned Jasmine around STEM, Jasmine's love for STEM propelled her into this career now of a PhD and whatever that looks like. Another supporter of the club years ago, Peter Salerno.
Oh, yes.
He does these amazing kitchens.
Yes.
But when I talk to him, he attributes his experience at the club and the art programming that kind of just, put this creativity around.
Sometimes they're just planting the seed.
Right.
They don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And now they're at this age where they're starting to get curious about what they want to do. And all of a sudden they walk into the music, room, and they're like, hey, this is something I could wrap my hands around, get my head involved in this. This is something I like.
And I think, and I'll just speak for myself here too when I say, I really am one of the, probably, depending on how you look at it, I love what I do, right? I love this organization. I love this opportunity to provide this, for these things for the youth here in this city. But I love what I do, right? Like, how many people can they say, like, I love what I do, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've always looked at it, it's a job or you have a career. And what I want the kids that come out of the club is to be inspired to find a career. So Monday through Friday, Sunday to Saturday, whatever their career looks like, they're happy. Yeah. And the rest of the stuff, right, like, hopefully falls in place for them. But when you work that job, I get up and I got to go to work. It's Tuesday. I can't wait till Saturday. You don't want to kind of think that, right? Like, just have something that you love.
Sure.
And we learn, from the kids, back to the coding, back to podcasting, back to all of these other things that we haven't been doing in years, we're now doing.
Yeah. Listen, being a boys club, and I'll use the rec center and the YMCA. I mean, we're one of the few municipalities in the state of Jersey that has a boys club, YMCA, and a rec center. Right. I don't think there's many other towns that have that at all. And you really have to have a love for kids.
You do.
If you don't, then you know what, it's going to be a short-lived career. All right, because they could get under your skin and you still go through your day, but you see the reward at the end of the day. And the end of the day is when they grow up. And like you said earlier, they come back and then like a Jasmine, like a Violetta, right? Like Miles and Louis and Wayne. And you see the success. And not even those guys, because those are the celebrities, but the other people. Like the Peter Salerno, who's a cabinet maker, and the John DeFalco, who comes back and gives back. But every day, so you have to rely on your counselors, right?
Right.
You have to always keep moving the needle, right? Get new programs that are, diverse enough to meet our community, and, our cultural responsiveness and everything like that. And then you also gotta, collect money somehow.
Yeah.
Get money
Yeah.
to get these programs up and running. So you got a Jeff Stewart who could grab your grants, and you get the donations, and you have your a couple of fundraisers a year, but you still always got to raise money, and then there's always something going on, and it's a continuous thing, but it's something that you just roll up your sleeves because you enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, the success is not that you put a new kitchen in or, you got a new basketball hoop. The success is that you saw this kid, and when he finally leaves the boys club at 15, 16, 17 years old, that you'll see him down the road, and he remembers all his counselors. He remembers you, Sugar, everybody. And that becomes the reward,
right?
Unfortunately, we need to get paid a little because you got bills to pay too.
That goes to say too. We say this in our Boys and Girls Club movement when we go on our conferences and we get together and we kind of
show me the money,
but also acknowledging that the work that we're doing in youth development is probably one of the most challenging jobs that's out there. And I look at the team now that's been with me over the years and the team that we're growing. I know for them, at the end of the day, yes, being paid, all that stuff is important. But when you ask them why they're working there, I would guarantee 9 times out of 10, it's a story on this youth. It's a story on this child that keeps them coming.
It's the connections they make.
They take the time to learn. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Yessie, who's our office manager, within 2 weeks of, by the second week in September, she's going to know every single kid that walks into our Midland Ave, site. And that's 180 to 200 kids.
Sure.
She'll know the names.
I don't even know the name of my kids.
and that's what, 12, 13? Yeah. But Rosa and Jessica, the same thing at 21st Century, and then understanding like what goes in, right? Like we are their support system. So I've always said until recently, because we just my wife and I just celebrated my son's first birthday.
There you go. Let's give a round of applause there.
But
happy birthday,
for the first for the first 10 years, I kind of looked at it as a way of every kid that was walking into the club was our child, right? Like the parents are entrusting us to give them a safe space. Obviously the easy things, right? Make sure their homework's done, make sure A, B, and C and all that, but I know, yes, we're gonna work on your homework, but that
I can't believe like how I've changed. I mean, you're talking close to 50 years, right? Maybe even 50 years, right? Like there was no homework, there was nothing. You walk in, like back to what we said earlier. You walk right on in,
right? You
play some games, you get underneath the counselor's skin, they throw you out, you go, and then you walk around the neighborhood until the sun went down, and then you had to get home.
Right. Well, and
now you're doing homework.
Right. Well, and I'll circle back, to what you said about the funding, right? I started in the movement in 2008. I was over at the Boys and Girls Club in Lodi, and I remember like when all the
movement, the youth movement,
the youth movement. When I forget what you call it, the recession or whatever. When in 2008 things changed, right? People saw hits in their retirements, their 401ks, housing, and then after that, right? I remember, I used to write a grant. Here's a check from Unilever for $15,000. And there wasn't necessarily anything that I had to show Unilever that we were doing with the $15,000.
Right.
Then after that, there was this huge piece of accountability. Even if I'm going to give you $500, I want to know that money, that support is going to something. And so that changed, right? It wasn't just, I want to see kids swim in gym. I want to see them graduate high school. I want to see them increase their reading levels. I want to see them to do, whatever the case may be. So then you look at it, right? Okay, this is different.
So for $500, sometimes the squeeze is not even worth the juice. When you got to know, you got to put in, 25-page report,
right?
50 hours of work, and you're giving me a $250 check. Keep it.
So that's why I
come back with $250,000. I don't mind.
And I think that's sometimes
so you got to pick and choose your grants.
There are things that we need to communicate more effectively. That what we do is not what it was 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's very expensive to what, it's very expensive. And I'm not against it, right? I think where I am now, where you are, I think we're at a point where we need to invest in the future, right? In the future, and I know this is cliche, right?
Yeah.
Like the youth are the future, but they really are.
Yeah.
So giving them, an opportunity, investing in all of these other things, I have no problem, writing that report. But I want to make sure, though, too, that, the support has to almost be equal to what we're trying to do and convey that where I am supportive of every donation that comes in, whether it's, $1 to, Party City 215,000. But it's tying it all in together and what we can manage expectations, right? Like I don't want to sit here and say, Mayor, I'm going to take this $50,000 grant and do A, B, and C when I know I can't do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Right. So there are certain opportunities that, maybe we do have to hold off because we don't have someone that can deliver, upon what they're being asked.
Or you just don't have the facility to do something like that. So I'm going to go into a topic, and we're not going to really discuss it because we're just in the beginning stages. But I know on Facebook, everybody's been, having their little fun and everything like that. So, so there's an idea out there. So we always got to think ahead of the, while move the vision forward. So there's an idea out there is that, we would like to redevelop the library, the rec center, the boys club, and the senior building. Knock them down and rebuild them. One goes down, you move them, and then you put them back in there, and they're up, and they're updated, and they're ready to rock and roll for the next 60 years, and hopefully, maybe longer. So that's the idea out there. So we're looking to redevelop that whole strip on Midland Ave. We're on the 1 yard line and we still got 99 yards to go to the other end zone.
Right.
It's just an idea and a vision. But to get this idea and vision out there, you got to do a study. So we're looking into these studies to see if this is even feasible, to have a developer come on in. Oh, no, not my favorite developer either. Because that's what I get, my favorite developer. Like, I wish I had a favorite developer. You can develop my house. But, we have people looking into it. They have a concept and, it's just in the beginning stages of, is this possible? And I know some people are very excited about it to have a new library, new rec, new senior building, new boys and girls club, maybe even a new YMCA, because all of these buildings, like we were talking about, are outdated. Right. And you got to get, kind of classrooms in there so you could get the other bunch of kids in there, like you were talking about. But unfortunately, it's just a thing. I would love to see it to happen. If it happens, it happens. Maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't happen, at least that discussion could be taken up. At least we got the ball rolling like everything else. It's a big undertaking, but I do know that all these organizations, their buildings need to be updated. Because it's tough to manage. Right. When you're raising money you got to raise 1.5 million just to stay afloat, and then you got to put a $500,000 HVAC system in. Now you got time to go raise some money there. But we're not. I don't want to put you on the spot and talk about that because
I can touch on two things on that. The importance wherever this vision goes, right? The importance of the feasibility study. Not only for the city, but for the club, we can understand whatever a potential future building may look like and what we would need in order to accomplish that, right? Yeah. So if this vision doesn't move forward, then we have a blueprint on how potentially maybe the club raises the money, the other organizations raise the money in order to move that forward.
Sure.
Two, back to accountability and what we raise dollars for. I'll just bring up, your point, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but when I tell you that it's $1.5 million to operate, if I even sat here and told you that it's $100,000 in repairs, whereas I could take $100,000 of that 1.5 and reallocate that to professionals in STEM, partnerships for it's a better use of resources.
Sure.
To every time to look at an HVA system, a boiler system that's, probably the original in there, I get it. there's certain things that, listen, I always understand that, there's going to be, repairs. Now being a homeowner, I understand. You think everything's good, it falls apart, you got to find money to do it.
Yeah. You just a boiler from charging everything onto your Amex.
Right.
I don't got the money, but charge it.
So we get to a point, and I think, look, it's not a concept that other clubs and 501c3s aren't looking at. I mean, there's a lot of
It's not just this boys club, and it's every boys club. It's the same thing. Like
it's everywhere.
You're always trying to update your facility,
right?
And you can only do so much inside the square footage that you have,
right? And you look at it, and as you know, Mayor, it's not cheap to do, right?
Even to do the Wi-Fi,
right? And so those are things, right? Like, I mean, we're at least our facility, we're all concrete. So every time Wi-Fi comes in, our IT people come in, it's a headache for them.
Yeah.
Because the way the building's constructed, you look at newer there's just new ways of doing things in a layout, so I'm excited about the conversation on what it could look like for the club.
I tell you what, it is a good conversation. For good, bad, or indifferent. If you're for it, people will talk great about it. If you're bad at it, those people will talk great about why it's bad, but at least they're having a conversation.
Exactly. And that's all you can ask for. Because again, the way that I tie it into, and I said this to you, the elements of the project are out of the club's hands. But my responsibility, around this, this vision is whatever it looks like, whether it's 5 years, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, the youth in Garfield have a facility that they can, like I said, walk into, be safe, they're learning, and then 10 years down the road, when they leave that club, they're coming back to see our counselors and the people within that club, telling them their stories of success. That's what we're here for.
There's only two things guaranteed here in Garfield, right? No, I won't say one of them. But having kids, right? We're a big school district. We have a lot of kids. We have over 6,000 students in our schools and everything like that. And finally, everybody's kind of like working together. Now, there's times that there's always a disagreement and everything, but at least we can always come to the table and have these discussions. And now that the school, the city, our clubs, we're always having these discussions, and we're always putting on some kind of event, activity, through your organization, the Boys and Girls Club, through the rec center, through the library, through the Y and everything like that. There's always something going on, because finally these things are happening. And this is what's making people proud that, this is a great spot. The city of Garfield is a great spot to start your career, raise your family before you start moving up to the upper Bergen counties. 3/4 of the upper Bergen counties come from Garfield, Lodi, Elmwood Park, and Wallington. That's how it is. But, the Boys and Girls Club is like the spot where the kids always remember. And we're one of the lucky ones because we have a Boys and Girls Club where the kids can say, I went to the Boys and Girls Club. I grew up. This is where I grew up. This is where I matured. This is where I met my best friends. This is where I met these people. I remember even the friends I didn't like. I remember them.
But let me ask you this. How many people are you still friends with out of the club when you came, your lifelong friends?
I don't know. The way they attack me on Facebook, I don't think any of them are my friends anymore. I'm like, I've been playing with you at the Boys Club, and now you're killing me.
Not being political. I mean, I'll say this. I know, the club is, for me, the club's, the important piece. I think it's a crown jewel, in Garfield. I think what sets us, above, in this community and others is we have a facility that the kids, the staff love to come to.
And the parents love dropping their kids off.
They know they're safe.
They know they're safe.
Yep.
And then and that's, the kids love going. But I hear also from the parents how much they praise the Boys and Girls Club and everything like that. From being the principal of the middle school to, they talk about it, like when their kids become freshmen, because we touch base when they're 14 and 15.
Right.
They're too cool to be hanging out with, 6 or 7 year olds. And the parents say, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do because my kid's going to high school and he's not involved in nothing. And I got to get him to do something. I got to get him a job. I miss the Boys and Girls Club and this, that, because they love going down there. The kids learned, discipline. They learned respect.
Right.
And they learned values. Part of what some of this country is missing for some of our youth.
I'll say it in terms probably of a microcosm of what you deal in your
I don't even know what that
day-to-day
word means.
life. a small.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah, break that thing down.
Very, a small thing. As I touched on, our coaches association, our staff, our families, our kids, 1.5 million. The one thing is, right, we're not doing this by ourselves.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of people to put this Boys and Girls Club together year in and year out. And from day one, your support as mayor, the council, even before your political days, and whatever the case, your support was always there. The one thing the club has been fortunate with, regardless of, the political, nature in the city.
And just so everybody knows, I just want the Boys and Girls Club, as well as the YMCA, they're non-political. They try to stay neutral as possible. They have to be, neutral for all right? Because they don't want to. I mean, if I was in your shoes, I don't want to be tied into that.
No,
And
the easy part to that too is to maintain our 501c3 status. We have to, we just can't. And luckily, right, and and I can't speak for the other communities, but luckily for us here in Garfield, I mean that's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would never want to put you in that
club.
In that position,
and I appreciate that, because like I said, the exciting part and what we need to be successful is the support of the mayor, council, the support of the superintendent and board of education, the support of our families, because we don't move forward without that type of support. And to your point earlier, in terms of conversation around disagreements, they're all healthy. As long as we conduct ourselves in ways that are polite, and you want to be respectful to things, because like as I touched on, all of our ideas, right, they're not necessarily just coming from my head. It's taking a wealth of people to say, hey, can we do A, B, and C?
Some of these ideas were actually done other places. It just doesn't fit our mold, and sometimes it does if you tweak it.
Right. We're not trying to look to reinvent the wheel, on a lot of this stuff. And, and this community has always come out, to support this club, and I'm thankful for that, and that goes years back.
I can honestly say that this community, the city of Garfield, when there's something going on, they come out and they support it.
Yeah.
And they put all the differences aside, no matter what you think of the politics of the town,
right? No
matter what you think of whatever, they come out and they support everything that goes on. I would say the majority, if they know, they support it.
Right.
I never hear a negative thing about when an event goes on and stuff like that. You may have one person who's unhappy because something didn't go their way, but everything that goes on at the Boys Club, I always hear positive things. You may have a parent complaining about a coach's decision or referees, the way they ref a game, but they love it.
And
that's part of the game.
We are not perfect.
No.
I mean, it's a work in progress, but again, I'll just say this, right? We're kind of in a people-driven business. We want to make our kids happy. We want to make the staff happy. And obviously, the parents and guardians play a big role in that, in giving us that opportunity. So not only is it funders, but it is to the parents that we hold an obligation to. So we're always learning and trying to be better. No one's going to come out and sit here and say, we're perfect. We have this master plan.
Right.
We would like to think sometimes, right? We would like to think sometimes, master plan, but it's like I said, it's this. We're always looking at for ways to improve.
So where do you see the Boys Club, and let's take out Midland Ave and that vision of the redevelopment, just in programming itself and growing. Where do you see the Boys Club in 5 years?
So, in 5 years, I would love to say that we are, just as a breakdown for numbers, we're, 200 kids every day in our aftercare program in Midland Ave, 150 kids in our, 21st century middle school program. So
350 kids.
Throw in during our sports season, we're serving 500 kids essentially a day through football, cheer, basketball, volleyball, and our aftercare programs. I want that number to be 1,000. If you take a look at it, and this is not a demerit on anybody, you look at the rec center, the YMCA, and the club, what our capacity is, does not come close to the 5,500 school age kids in the city.
Right.
So there is a large percentage of kids that just don't have access, and not even access. It's we don't have the capacity to bring more in. You know, summer camp in Garfield was full in all organizations.
Yes, all right.
So it's finding a way to service more kids. And then when you say service more kids, it's finding now the right staff or more staff to do that. And then obviously if it's 1.5 million now with what we're doing and we've got to double to 3 million, how do we find that money, you know, to do what we're doing for these kids? So in 5 years, I want to come back on this podcast and I want to say, we're serving.
I'd like to be here in 5 years and have that podcast.
We're serving, 1,000 kids a day. We have, with the redevelopment out, we have plans for a new facility. We're adding on to the facility. We are taking a facility that is not currently being used for anything in the city, and we have the resources to turn it into another site. Whatever that looks like, but it's expansion.
So right now, with the football and the cheer going on, you're servicing about 500 kids.
Yep.
Is there another boys club within the area that services that many that you think of?
The only,
I know Newark maybe have a boys club of this, so they got 500,000 people.
Clifton and Patterson, because they're currently in all the school sites. They service more kids, but in terms of a town at a similar size to Garfield, no. We are doing it.
That's why all those other ones come down to you,
right? And
want to pick your brains and figure out how'd you guys become so successful,
right?
In a 10-year window. You know, you went from here to here.
We had no money. Boys and Girls Clubs of America looking you mentioned earlier, looking at other organizations to bring us in and fold into.
Those dirty dogs coming into our backyard, trying to grab us.
But they understand now. Like I said, the leadership of, the board over the years, the commitment to the staff and the families to stick by to straighten this out. I will always be thankful because, as I said, with all of these things falling into place, selfishly I can say this: it's allowed me to find what my career, my purpose is, moving forward. So the club being fixed essentially has created a path, now for, for me to, to give back. And that's one, one way that I look at it too, right? Like I was, really, fortunate in my upbringing, having my mom and dad around the support system.
Did you have a boys club where you grew up?
We did not. We probably should have. Growing up in West Milford.
Oh, forget about it. You didn't have nothing.
You're right. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
And you look at the challenge.
You had a shop, right?
We did. Yeah, still do. And one traffic light that is celebrated every September with the Autumn Lights Festival.
Oh, it blinks and everybody oohs and ahs.
We shut down that road and the light, and all the local vendors and stuff come out to celebrate, the first traffic light going into
that. West Milford is a crazy community there.
But so, getting out of West Milford, you look at.
You saved your life? Nah, I'm only kidding.
Nah,
to the residents of I'm only kidding.
You get out of West Milford and you understand like there really is a whole other, world, out there. And for me growing up, not having access to, we were still looking at encyclopedias, right? It wasn't social media, it wasn't these things. But when I started in Lodi and you see what Hackensack and Garfield
For
are.
the kids, they don't know what a encyclopedia is.
Right. It's a book that you would go and actually learn, read through the information of history. You didn't.
It was Google in a book.
Right. Google in a book. And sometimes it was not nearly as quick as Google, to find the information.
Right.
But it made me realize doing this work that, what our club means to the community and providing these resources is it gave a support system that, as I said, that I had growing up, but I know a lot of the kids that we're servicing right now, they have missing pieces to their support system.
Yeah, they do.
So to give them or to work in order to try to give them those missing pieces is kind of all the motivation, that I need. Like I said, because success looks, I keep saying this, but success looks differently, for everybody.
That's right.
And that's what we're trying to do.
And well, you guys do a great job at it because ever since I was young to everybody I know that came through there, the boys club when I was growing up, to the Boys and Girls Club, which was a great move. Whoever came up with that, to the National Boys and Girls Club, kudos to them. They have been successful because they made their friends, they made their lifelong memories. It's about memories. It's about telling the stories and everything like that. It's just about the networking of themselves. I have a friend that I went to the boys club with, and that is doing this, and I have a friend, and I still say this. Oh, I've known him since the boys club days. Right. And he is an electrician. He's the doctor. He's the podiatrist. Right. The chiropractor. Like these are the lifelong friends that you don't see all the time, but you remember the stories. Right. And then they tell you those war stories, and that's the greatest thing. So you guys, to you, to Sugar, to everybody, to Yessie, to everybody down there, from your counselors, present to past, you guys are doing a great job down there. Just keep it up, keep moving forward. And, I thank you for coming on.
No, thank you, man, for
the first podcast ever.
This was good.
And listen, the Boys and Girls Club really thrives on donations. So if anybody's out listening there, any donation is always, appreciated. And, just hopefully it's to the Garfield Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
But if you're in another town and you're listening and you want to donate to that one, fantastic, because it is serving a purpose. It goes directly to the kids. And that's what it is. And if you went to the Boys and Girls Club, you know what we're talking about. They take pride in it. They love their job. They love what they're doing. And your kids, our kids, become better adults later in life. That's how I look at it.
I agree with you 100%. And I would just add on, if you feel so inclined to support the club, visit our website, www.bgcgarfield.org. You'll find a link to, in how to support that. And then also, I would encourage you to leave a note on how you want that donation to be used. We have donors all the time that, send in, little notes on how to, on how to use that. So whether it's through the arts, whether it's through STEM, send us a couple bucks with, some instructions on how you would like to do that. And we'll accommodate, those needs. As the mayor said, any support is super appreciative. I thank you, for this opportunity. As I
couldn't ask for a better person to come on the first podcast.
I could speak Boys and Girls Clubs and the importance of it, I think, for hours. So I think, I'm excited for this to come out, for you all to listen to, and again, with any questions, please, reach out. And then, Mayor, thank you for this opportunity and all that you do and continue to do.
I appreciate that. Well, listen, I can't do that without the team of people. I have my council, my deputy mayor, my city manager, and just everybody else that supports the club. Because, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the club and my ex-counselors that I had, that I always remembered. It was part of my life growing up. I don't know where I would be going and what I'd be doing, but I always knew that after school, I'm going down to the boys club by myself or with my friends. If I was by myself, I was meeting my friends there, and friends I knew from the other side of the town. That's how I got to know the other side of the town, is the boys club. It's the connection. Right. And they became my lifelong friends. And, and I don't think, I can honestly say, I don't think I would be here if I didn't have a Boys and Girls Club in my life. And I can say that with my brothers as well. And they were all successful, from doctors, lawyers, engineers. They are, it was because of the Boys and Girls Club that, was the starting point of how they should behave, and, the values and the discipline that they've, made through their lives. So
that's the most important part. And that's what I love to hear.
I want to thank Bravery Studios and my man Marvin right here, Bravery Studios, all right, for having us today. I also want to thank J&S Pork Store in Lodi. They gave us some great food out there, so I want to give a shout out to them, and a shout out to all my Garfield Middle School students. School's coming up, guys. Start preparing and everything like that. And enjoy the rest of your vacation. You know, we got school coming up. We got our first football game next week. You know, with the junior Boilermakers.
Right.
And you got to get physicals out of the way. I heard.
We do. We do. I got a couple messages that I gotta take care of, around that topic.
So for everybody, enjoy the rest of your summer. You know, September's coming around, and let's start preparing for school. And thank you, Shay, my man.
Thank you. Which is best.
All right.